Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the grand finale of season 1 of our podcast series, which we have dubbed as Childhood Development Podcast. And I'm your host, Emmanuel Chisalu, and today we are diving into one of the most fascinating and critical aspects of a child's early years, and that is language development, and obviously which transforms into communication skills. Now, in this season, from episode 1 up to the last episode, which is episode number 5, we have journeyed through the fundamental elements that shapes the child's growth, development, from cognitive intelligence to social and emotional skills. As we conclude this season, we turn our focus to the cornerstone of human connection, and obviously I know what that element is. That is language. Now, the ability to communicate effectively not only enhances a child's academic and social success, but also lays the groundwork for lifelong learning and also building relationships in society. Now, today's podcast, in particular today's episode, is very special as we have the honor of speaking to our resident expert, and that is Professor Yamba, a distinguished expert in human capital and child development. Together, we are going to explore the intricate stages of language development, the profound impact of early childhood language exposure, and the crucial role of interactive communication. Professor Yamba, welcome once again to your home-based childhood development podcast as we close season number 1.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Thank you. The grand finale of season 1.
Season 1.
Yes, and I like what you said.
Uh-huh.
It's about human connection.
Human connection.
You know, language is about human connection.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And you know, with that language, it's difficult to connect with other human beings. So, indeed, this is a very important aspect of child development.
Certainly.
Yes.
So, Prof, obviously now we have reached the grand finale of season 1, something that was construed as an idea. It was an imagination.
Yeah.
That one day we should sit down like this and obviously have a strong conversation that is centered around childhood development and how we can help our great nation, Zambia, obviously shift gears and focus on the most critical aspect of sustainable development, which is investment in childhood development, and obviously at a secondary stage, investment in human capital development. So just a quick reflection of how this season has been. What are your key takeaways? Is it a dream come true to launch this podcast?
You know, Emmanuel, I'm so excited that we could actualize this podcast because it's talking about the future of our nation. If you recall where we started from and where we are today, it is all talking about the future.
Indeed.
Where we come from, how we develop, and how we become critical thinkers, how we become, creators, how we become competent. It all points to the first 5 years of our life.
Indeed.
And I think the most important takeaway is that, the first 5 years of our life matter most in our development.
Indeed.
If you want your nation, your country to develop, you better invest in the first 5 years because this is the foundation of human capital development. If you don't invest in that, well, you've destroyed your nation. you know where we are coming from, the way you started. You said, but these are just babies. Why do we have to talk about babies?
Yeah, why not focus on adults?
Why not focus on adults?
Who are more energetic and now they are running the wheels of the economy.
Oh, no. It's too late, Emmanuel.
Yeah.
It's too late. When you focus on adults, it's too late. And that's because, when you're an adult, the brain is no longer as elastic or as plastic as it was during the first 5 years.
Yeah.
You remember the first 1,000 days?
Yes.
Yeah? The first 1,000 days are very, very critical. In fact, even as we talk about, today's episode, language development, communication skills, we can go back to the first 1,000 days.
Yeah.
And as you know, the first 1,000 days begin in the womb.
Indeed.
From conception.
From conception.
Yes.
We start counting down.
We start counting down up to when we are about 2 years old.
Yeah.
Language, first of all, begins by hearing.
Yeah.
A child must hear you, not so. They must hear your sounds.
Yes.
And then that's how they will develop the language.
Yeah.
And when does the hearing start? It starts when we are in the womb.
In the womb.
Somewhere when we are about 18 weeks old. Yeah, there's the ability, the child develops the ability
to hear. And pick up sounds.
But by the time they are 25, 26 weeks in the womb, they can even respond to the sounds from the mother.
Is that the first sense they develop?
That's the first sense they develop, yes. Hearing is the first sense that they develop. Yes.
Great.
And by the time they are born, they are already responding to everything. Because they can hear everything. And you recall that at some point, we said that in your house, in your home, as parents, depending on the language that you are using, and of course your wife is pregnant, the child is hearing. Don't be surprised at some point when they are born and then now they are growing up, they start using certain words.
Yes.
That will surprise you.
They were picking up everything.
They're picking up everything.
While they were in that inner environment.
When they're in the inner environment. And, by the time they're 2 years old, by the way, in terms of language, they're able to say some 200 to 300 words. Just the first, 2 years.
2 years, yes.
Yes, exactly. So you see, development of the language begins from the womb, if you wish.
Because that was going to be my next curious question to say. So does it mean that this human connection, language development, starts in the womb?
Yes, it starts from there. As I mentioned, it begins with hearing.
Hearing, yes.
Because if a child cannot hear, they can't develop the language. They can't develop those words to communicate.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we can actually say language development begins from there, from the womb. Because first they must hear words.
Yeah.
Yes.
Indeed, ladies and gentlemen, as you've heard from Professor Yamba, obviously we were just, for those of you that have missed any of our episodes from season 1, we're just running what we call a refresher course. just trying to bring you to speed on most critical aspects of our conversation that we have delved into the 4 episodes that we've had so far. And of course today, like I mentioned earlier on in our introduction, our focus is on language development. Now, to begin the ball rolling on this subject matter of episode number 5, Professor Yamba, I would want you, first of all, of course, in your earlier sessions, you've talked about language development kickstarting.
Yes.
In the first 1,000 days. And those critical early days when the child is still in the mother's womb, they are developing the aspect of language because their first sense is hearing.
Hearing, yes.
And hearing results into language development.
Yes.
And I love the fact that you mentioned that don't be surprised when this child grows and if, for instance, you were sarcastic, using all this Kaponya language when your wife or the mother was pregnant, and then the child suddenly you'll be, iwe.
Who taught you
Who
this?
taught you that?
Yeah. But don't forget it's yourself.
Interesting perspective, and I would want you now, as my first question, could you walk us through the typical stages of language development in children, from infancy, like we've highlighted there, to early childhood?
Sure.
What are some of the key milestones parents should look out for?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. There are a number of stages that a child passes through as they learn the language. And in fact, during the first 1,000 days, when they are born, the first sounds they will make will be what we call cooing sounds, where a child is simply say, oh, 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 So they start from there, okay? And of course, they've been hearing your sounds. Yeah. And then, of course, that will advance to, words like da, 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 ba, 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 ma, ma, ma. Ta, ta, so those are different stages. They come at different stages. Ta, ta, ta. And eventually, they start forming simple words. And as I mentioned, by the time they are 2 years old, they can speak some, depending on the environment, they can speak 200 to 300 words. By the time they are 5 years old, they're somewhere between 2,000 to 3,000 words. So it's a gradual process. That is how language develops. And of course, they are hearing from you. So you are, as parents, you are the first line of teaching the child language.
Okay.
Yes. And therefore, as parents, you have to look at those stages, as milestones.
Okay.
Those are the key milestones. Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So just the ooh, when the child begins that, okay.
You're able to tick.
You're able to tick.
We're making progress.
We are making progress. Right. They move on, ba, 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 da, da, da. You tick.
Yeah.
Ma, 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 you tick. And eventually, some words begin coming out.
Yeah.
So that is what happens. And of course, we must take this seriously because remember, we are talking about human connection.
Yeah.
And you want your child to grow and become a person who can communicate effectively with other human beings. Yeah. You don't want your child to be limited in the vocabulary.
Yes.
But we have seen this in our society. There are people who are very limited with the vocabulary. So it becomes difficult for them to communicate. Yeah. And if you can't communicate, then it's a problem. Your performance also is affected. Exactly. Yeah.
And your connection with other people in society is also affected.
It's affected.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So, Prof, you've told us, first of all, the stages of language development in children.
Yeah.
And obviously some of the key milestones that parents should look out for. All right.
Yeah.
So obviously at that critical, important stage of language development, we look at now the key players who are involved in helping this child develop the language.
Yes.
All right. So how can this community, I love using the word community because it involves the parents, it involves the family, it
Yeah.
involves the caregivers.
Caregivers, yes.
Those that are surrounding the child. So how can they best support the child's progression through these stages?
You know, those are the key players, as you have mentioned. Yeah. And how do they support the child? It is through constant conversation.
Okay.
Yeah. You have to be talking to your child. Yeah. You know, caregivers, talking about caregivers, sometimes we do have the people that we call maids in our homes who take care of our children. Yeah. Those are partners in development because they contribute so much to the language development in the child. So interactive communication, interactive communication plays a vital role in this language development. So as I mentioned already, conversations with the children, then also you also practice listening. You know, you have to listen. So the child is seeing all these things. Then of course speak, encourage children to ask questions, express their thoughts and engage in dialogue so that, you know, you foster their linguistic abilities and the confidence in the communication.
Okay.
In fact, Emmanuel, research suggests that exposure to language from an early age is crucial, very, very crucial for the development of strong communication skills.
Exposure to language at an early age.
Exactly. At an early age is very crucial for the development of strong communication skills. Yeah. I've already mentioned you must talk to your child. You must sing to your child. You must read to your child, you know, and read regularly. So this exposure will help children learn vocabulary, sentence structure, and also tones of communication. Because sometimes, you know, as you communicate, there are those words that you emphasize, so the tone will change. And so on. And so the child is learning from all those. So this community is critically important. Yeah. And of course, you know, your child probably at 3 years will go to school. Sometimes even before 3 years, before they go to preschool, there's what do they call these facilities? Daycare facilities. Yes. So the teachers or caregivers at that stage become part of the community that you are referring to, who help the child to develop effective communication.
Well, that's an eye-opening conversation. There's so much that goes into language development.
So much. So much. And therefore, we must all pay attention to it. Remember, again, we are developing this person who must be, who contribute to the economy in the future, who contribute to the quality of life to society. Indeed. And therefore, you want to build them right from the beginning. Communication skills. This is where many of us, I think, don't do very well. Communication skills. So, you know, it becomes, Emmanuel, you know, in colleges, in universities, we have some courses which were communication skills. But you see, if you didn't have it during the first 5 years, it is very difficult for you to actually, even if you take that course and even pass it well. But you know, if you didn't have it during the first 5 years, it is still a challenge.
And this is what I tell people, that for me, I look at communication as an art. It's a science.
Yes, it is.
Am I right? So how eloquent you are, how persuasive you are,
Yeah.
how convincing you are.
Yes.
All right. And obviously how interactive you are all stems from how your language development stages were shaped.
Yes.
Yeah. So you find that if, for instance, you've grown up in an environment where you've constantly had conversations, that people always interactive, storytelling,
yes.
all those abilities, right?
Yeah.
They get passed on.
Yes.
To you, and it becomes what term can I use? Or more or less like an inherited, a passed on skill.
Absolutely.
From one
generation to another. Yeah. And we need to do that actually, because it also helps us in when we grow up and now we are connecting to others.
Yes.
Networking, collaboration.
Yes.
It becomes easier for us to network with others.
And somehow I usually feel that other people, well, I know that there is a category of extroverts and also introverts.
Yes.
Yeah. But I feel that to a greater extent, many people hide in the name of being introverts.
Yeah.
Say, no, I'm an introvert. I don't like being around people. I don't like talking to people. But somehow that title comes from these critical moments
I think it comes from those moments of life. Yes. Yeah. So it's how really your parents brought you up during those critical moments.
Yes.
As well as the other members of that community. That we have talked about.
Indeed.
So that community, very, very important.
Very, very important. And obviously, Prof, you've also touched on one important aspect. Of course, I was going to throw a question on it while you were sharing these important nuggets. You talked about the importance of early language exposure.
Yes.
And I was reading one of the key documents that you had shared with me, where you talked about the critical importance of research on the impact of talking, singing, and reading to children from a younger age.
That's right.
So you've mentioned those aspects, but to our listeners and also our viewers, can you share some practical tips for parents now to incorporate these facets into more language exposure in their daily routines?
Well, I think I've already mentioned that you need to interact with your child regularly. Yeah. You need to converse with your child regularly. You also need to practice listening. You need to be asking your child some questions. Let them practice talking. Let them practice talking.
Okay.
Yeah, because that is the only way that they learn the language. Yes.
So could that be now also another critical aspect of interactive communication?
Yes, that is interactive communication. We call that interactive communication.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
And obviously you've talked about as well encouraging children to ask questions and express their thoughts during interactions.
Yes. Okay. It is very important because, in life, we must learn to ask questions. Okay. And especially, when we are still young, because this is when we want to, we want the child to develop this ability of curiosity, asking questions. Yes. Okay. Because if they don't ask questions, then they will not know, how to resolve certain issues, how to solve problems. So they must begin learning this ability of asking questions early enough. Yes.
That's very critical.
Very.
Yeah. Learning the ability to asking questions.
Early enough. Early enough. And you see, as I've mentioned already, asking questions is a part of solving problems. Yeah. Life is full of challenges or problems, that we must solve.
Every day we wake up to new problems.
Every day we wake up to new problems.
Which require new mind,
yes,
new solutions.
New solutions, exactly.
Yeah.
And therefore, we want to raise our children in such a way that they become problem solvers.
Solvers, yes.
And one of the major ways is for them to learn to ask questions. Yeah. Because when they ask questions, that way they are developing a critical mind. Yes, a critical mind.
Yeah.
And so that helps them to become great people, competent people.
I'm now connecting the dots. So, I hear people, even myself actually,
yes,
we have these conversations on a daily basis.
Yes.
Those that usually have the opportunity to be in the corridors of power,
yes,
or to interact with those people that hold enough power, whenever they're given an opportunity to ask questions, we're always short of critical questioning.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There is what we call good questions.
Yes.
And good questions are those critical questions you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So many times you find that there's a seminar presentation, and after that, any questions? Yeah. One of the common questions that comes up is, they're asking the presenter.
Yes.
Are you able to give us the presentation?
The slides.
The slides. So you can see that many times we are short of asking those critical questions.
Critical questions, which are good questions.
Which are good questions. Yeah. And where is it coming from? From the early stages. That's where it's coming from.
Yeah.
So our listeners, our viewers out there, and those of you who, especially who are parents,
yes,
yeah, take note of this. We want your child or your children to ask good questions when they grow up.
Yes.
But it all begins with yourselves. Yeah. It begins with yourselves. It is you to teach your children to ask good questions. Yeah.
And this is where now the role of interactive communication plays a critical role.
Very, very critical role.
In shaping smart, intelligent, inquisitive, and curious children.
Yes. Yes. You can imagine, Emmanuel, if the whole population is just as you have described, where would we be?
Would have been at a different level now.
Different level.
Yeah. Because if questions are good, questions are intelligent, they are critical, they become probing in nature. Meaning that those that you've entrusted with enough power will take strong accountability for their actions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think it's the start of something great. And obviously for us young parents, and those that are yet to be parents, we will put this into strong consideration if indeed we want to have a generation of people that are great communicators, but most importantly, on the aspect of asking questions, ask very good questions.
Yes.
Now, Prof, there is another aspect of our conversation that we cannot run away from in today's modern era, and that's the aspect of technology and language development.
Technology, yes.
And language development. So there are so many technological tools and platforms out there, and more especially that every day there's a new application that is developed, there's a new software, there's a new platform. We can't even overlook the impact of artificial intelligence, machine learning, all these critical tools that are coming on every day. So when we look at it from the perspective of language development, more especially for us young parents who are raising children in such an era, how do technological tools and platforms impact children's language development?
Oh, yes. Actually, these platforms can influence the language development You know, you have got all kinds of technological applications today in this space. You have the doors that are talking. You have interactive games. Yeah. You have, you know, digital media. You know, all these can supplement language learning. So, as parents in this modern era, you know, what we call the computer era, the IT era, the artificial intelligence era now, and so on, use those technologies. They help your child in developing the language, in developing communication skills. So let us use those applications. You know, Emmanuel, you know, you can go to any of these toy shops, and you find all kinds of applications, games, and other, you know, applications that you can actually use to help your child develop the language. You see, as the child grows and as you talk to them more, I've already mentioned that these other technologies are there to supplement your efforts in, you know, in your child learning the language. Okay? But how I wish that as a country, we could also advance and begin making these same toys, you know, that could speak in our languages, and so on and so on.
That's a brilliant idea.
Because, I mean, it's only English, currently. Why English only?
That's a very important question.
So think about it yourself. Yes. We want these gadgets that can speak in Ilunda, in Bemba, in Tonga, Mambwe, and so on.
Whatever.
Yes. So let's advance to those, but of course, we know where we are currently.
Indeed.
But it is very important that you know, we use these technologies as a supplement to the language development in our children. Yes.
Obviously, Prof, you've spoken on the good side of technology and how we can use these platforms to complement and also enhance language development. What I've noticed so far is, while yes, we're trying to use these technological tools and platforms to help our children's language development, somehow they are drifting them away from real-world interaction.
That's a very important point that you have mentioned. In fact, let me mention this. Let not these technologies replace the real-world interactions, where human beings are interacting. So you need to interact more. In fact, you need to be careful, because apart from these things, the toys that we've talked about, even you know, your TV in the home, there are also programs there from which your child can learn new words. You know, there are all these iPads, there are games there where your child can also pick some words and so on. And it is good. But at the same time, be careful. Let not these replace the real human interaction. So let your child understand that there's a limit as to how much they can watch TV, as to how much they can interact with these iPads, the games on the iPad and other toys. There must be a limit to that. Because in the real world, they will be interacting more with other human beings.
Yeah.
You see, we're already seeing it with your daughter.
Yes.
So you need to monitor that, okay?
Yeah.
Monitor the screen time.
Yes.
Monitor that interaction with the phones, the iPads, and other gadgets.
Yeah.
Monitor that. There must be a limit.
A limit.
Yes.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So parents out there, you've heard for yourselves. I know it's very good as well to expose children to technology.
Yeah.
But at the same time, strike a balance.
Strike a balance.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ensure that you limit accessibility to these platforms so that children can have the human part of them. Because the danger is if they are more on these technological gadgets and interacting less with the people, that human element will be squeezed out of them.
It will be squeezed out of them, and that's not very good because remember, by nature,
yes,
human beings are social beings.
Social beings, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we must always remain social beings.
And this is where now you find that they're in leadership, but they're behaving like robots. They're not empathetic,
Yeah.
not understanding, not interactive.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's dive into the aspect of cultural influences on language development. And obviously this plays a very critical role because, I mean, as humans, we cannot substitute ourselves from our culture. All right. So how do cultural norms and values shape language and communication practices in children?
Okay. There are several ethnic groups in our country.
Yes.
And each ethnic group has its own culture in a way. So, yes, we are one people, but there are some specific differences. Yeah. For example, how we greet, how we talk to each other, many things. And so, culture obviously will influence how your child also begins responding to communication because they are learning from you. And so you are bringing them up in a certain culture, and it is important that you shape them according to those cultural norms within your culture and tradition. That is, that's how culture really can influence, the language development in your child. Just this communication aspect, because we communicate differently. Yeah. If you go to Northern Province, you go to Western Province, you go to Southern, you go to Northwestern, the way we greet probably differs.
Yes.
How you greet is different from the way you greet maybe other people, how you greet other leaders, political leaders and so on. All that is part of culture. And so your child is seeing all that and they get influenced by that and they will begin responding and do exactly what they're seeing from you. Yeah.
Interesting perspective. So, meaning that when you look at the fundamental aspects of culture, it equally plays that huge role in language development.
It plays a very huge role.
Yeah.
Yes. Because a child can only communicate in the way that people within that culture communicate.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So they're always guided within the confines.
So they are always guided within the confines of the cultural practices and traditions.
So this is why it reminds me of my late dad. Whenever he sees some unusual behavior in the house from me and my siblings, or just the way we interact or talk, I think the first thing that he would always bring out was, that's not part of our culture. Where are you picking these uncalled for habits you are bringing into my house?
Yeah. So as parents, you need to be careful.
Yeah.
And also as your child grows, what sort of people is he or she interacting with?
Yes.
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah.
So, Prof, as we zero down on our conversation, And obviously, it's been an interactive and also exciting discussion looking at the critical role of language development and how it enhances the child's development from conception to where they are when they become adults.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let us also look at the other aspect of the conversation, and this is something that I'd also want to bring to your attention: the role of play in language learning. So, could you explain how play activities, all right, different activities, contribute to language learning and social interaction in children? And obviously, in your response, I'd also want you to touch on the types of play that are particularly beneficial to language development.
Okay. First of all, play is a natural context for language learning and social interaction. Just playing, you are playing with your child. So through imaginative play, storytelling and the role playing, children explore language, they practice communication skills and develop their creativity and empathy. Encouraging play-based activities can enrich children's language development experiences. And of course, there are a number of examples that we can give, and especially in this modern era. Yes. I've mentioned the, role playing, for example. Where children can pretend to be somebody. They can pretend to be a teacher. They can pretend to be a doctor. They can pretend to be a lawyer or something of the sort. And then engage in role playing scenarios, which encourages them to use new words, new vocabulary, and even complex sentences. They can set up a shop, for example, where they are selling and buying.
Merchandising.
Merchandising. So, these things begin from afar. They begin from afar. Those who are successful in these things, they begin from afar because they were teaching them when they were young. Okay? Then also interactive reading. Okay? Dialogic reading, for example, which involves asking open-ended questions about the story to encourage children to think and talk about what they hear. So you read a story and then ask them, what did they hear? Try to ask open-ended questions so that you get engaged in the conversation with them. That way you are helping them. Language games. So, there are these word matching games, where you can match pictures, ask the child to match pictures to the words. Music and movement. So, you can sing songs, and there are those songs you can play songs. There are those songs with the repetitive lyrics and actions, which will help children to remember words. And of course, their meanings as well. Then also art and craft activities, like drawing and describing. So children can draw pictures and then describe them. And this encourages descriptive language, outdoor play as well. Just you can take, what we call nature walks. Nature is beautiful. Out there, walking in the forest or just around the gardens and so on. So, taking these walks and then discussing what they see. What are they seeing? Then, of course, there are also memory games, games that involve remembering and describing pictures. So these are different activities or play-based activities that can help the child develop the language and the communication skills. So you can see, Emmanuel, that parents have a big job in bringing up children and ensuring that they develop the language and the communication skills. They have a big job.
Yeah.
So what we are saying is, don't simply leave your child alone and assume that they'll pick it up.
Yeah.
Where will they pick it up from?
Be involved.
Be involved.
Be engaged.
Be engaged. I know that in the next season.
Yes.
Yeah, we shall be talking about parenting tips.
Yes.
Yeah. We shall be talking about parenting tips. But so we have already set the ball rolling. So people should look forward to the next season. We'll talk about how parents must get involved. Yeah. So don't leave your children unattended. You're not helping them. You're doing damage. You're doing more harm to them than good.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So to zero it down, and obviously perhaps as my last question, you've talked about parents not leaving their children alone, but rather they must be involved and also engaged.
Yeah.
So when we bring back the aspect of the community, we talked about the parents, caregivers, and also educators.
Yes.
All right. What are some of the effective ways that this special community can create a language-rich environment at home and in schools? Obviously, now we're looking at the aspects of supporting language development, both from the home setting and also educational setting.
Well, they must provide meaningful learning opportunities and offering positive reinforcement, to support the child's growth and confidence in communication. Yeah. The home members of the home community and members of the school community, the educators, must collaborate, because remember, the child is at home, but then the child is taken to school.
Yes.
Okay? Yeah. At an appropriate age, of course, they go to school. So there must be strong collaboration between these two communities. Yeah. So that a child benefits fully from both the home environment as well as the school environment. So this ensures continuity in the language development and also consistency in the strategies to support the children. So all the time, parents must be interested in what the educators are doing. Educators must also be interested in what the parents are doing. So these two are very important in ensuring that the child develops the proper language as well as effective communication skills.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Professor, for joining us on the grand finale of Season 1, and we were exploring episode number 5, that is language development. But obviously, we don't end our podcast conversations just like that. Just like in boxing, there's a killer punch. Which, knocks out your opponent. So, in the perspective of our conversation, what is your killer message?
My final word.
Policymakers,
my final
communities, so on and so forth.
The child needs a lot of support to develop the language and the communication skills.
Indeed.
Okay? And it is only this time, during the first 5 years, that a child can develop those skills that will help him or her in future to communicate effectively, to solve problems effectively, to think critically, to make things happen. Do not limit your child to a few words. Let your child have broad vocabulary. Okay? Otherwise, they'll have difficulty in expressing themselves. And therefore, you don't want your child to have difficulty in expressing themselves when they grow up.
Yes.
And so, all of us must take interest in the children, the parents, the caregivers, the educators, policymakers up there. Ensure that the educators who are teaching these young ones have the skill themselves to teach the young ones. And I always say this, Emmanuel, when it comes to early childhood development. This is one area where we have not paid attention to. So policymakers out there, remember, this is the future of your nation. The nation that you are responsible for today. These children at some point will be the ones responsible for the same. Therefore, ensure that these children develop proper communication skills that will propel this nation to higher heights.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prof, for that killer punch, the killer word. Obviously, it's a collective responsibility that we need to join hands together to ensure that this most precious and delicate resource is well taken care of and goes through the critical fundamental stages of development, leaving no stone unturned. Until next time, we look forward to having you in season number 2, where now we'll dive deep into further conversations that gives us or guarantees us of a brighter future when we invest in early childhood development. And obviously, with our resident expert, Professor Yamba, we continue digging deep into the conversations of childhood development. And thank you so far for following us. Thank you so far for those beautiful comments. Thank you so far for raising awareness within your respective communities, resharing these conversations that we've had in the first season of the childhood development. And we wish you nothing but the very best as we interact together as one community to develop the next leaders of our generation and of our time. Goodbye. Until next time. All right.